screen. So hi, everybody. My name is Helene Parker. Welcome to a live training. This is sponsored by Programmatic Digest Podcast. If you have not listened to the podcast yet or subscribe or do everything you need to do on the podcast and YouTube world, make sure to do it. So this recording is going to be shared and published in the next couple of weeks. So you guys get exclusivity and you get to ask your questions. And I have the lovely Iesha here that's going to be introducing herself in a hot second. But you're here because you want to talk about pre-bid filters, private marketplace deals, maybe some curation, maybe some curated deals, whatever the difference is. We're going to talk about those don'ts, but we're definitely going to focus on troubleshooting the two aforementioned. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, but feel free to ask your question in the chat. I'm going to mute everybody. But if you cannot unmute yourself to ask questions, feel free to raise your hand. Or again, you can just drop your questions. And I have a lot of friends of the podcast and of the community in the chat. So anybody can jump in and help out. It's always appreciated. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then Iesha, we can start with your introduction. So give me 1 second. Alrighty, righto. Everybody sees the screen? Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's rock and roll. Okay. So what to expect for the next 30-ish minutes? You can expect some high energy. Why? Because it's just who I am. This is just who I is. It's Monday afternoon. You probably finished your lunch, or you're having lunch if you're on the Pacific side, like the West Coast side. You're gonna expect some definition. Why? Because we're an industry that love to throw acronyms, and so I'm going to redefine some things. So for some of us, it's going to feel like fundamentals refresher, but for others, hopefully you get to learn. But if you're unable to teach somebody what you learned or what you already know, it means you got to keep learning. So you're in the right space. We're going to have some shameless plug. We're going to have a live Q&A. Again, all the questions should be in the chat. You can raise your hand. You can unmute and kindly, let us know that you have unmuted and you have a question. This is no big deal. Iesha and I are really cool about that. We may or may not have some memes and some QR codes, okay? And so quickly, today we're going to talk about pre-bid filters, post-bid verification, how to troubleshoot those two. We're going to understand PMPs and curated deals. What are the differences? Because there are a lot of conversation about curation, and so we're gonna define it the way we see it as a buyer's perspective. So for all my publishers in the chat, for all my sell side friends, my data partners, welcome. This is a space for you as well. This is a great opportunity for you to understand what we understand, what we make of curation, and maybe you can use this information to approach some of us the way we need to be approached, but maybe the way we need to understand this information, because it's rather important. And then we have a guide for y'all, because y'all know I'm all about actionable insight. That means whatever you learn today, you'll be able to implement tomorrow or an hour from now. So you have an opportunity to download a guide at the end of this. Again, my name is Helene Parker. I am your host, your programmatic coach. I have a consultancy called Helene Parker Consulting, and we teach programmatic advertising. We do programmatic activation. We do workshops. We can train individually and we can train the whole team. Now, although our core is buy side, in the last 6-7 months, we've had the pleasure of working with exciting adtechs and SSPs and sell side partners. And so we want to keep doing that. So if you are interested in any workshop, there's going to be an opportunity to connect at the end of the deck. Before I hand it over to Iesha White, I just want to say a big thank you to her for making the time to be here today, okay, because it's dinner time for her, or at least on that side of the world. And I really appreciate you, Iesha. I appreciate your expertise, and I cannot wait to see and hear what we have going on. So now pass to you, Iesha. Welcome to the conversation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ellen. So yes, my name is Iesha. And if you're unsure on how to spell it or how to pronounce it, My name is, if you just hover over it, you'll see I've put it in parenthesis on my video. And a little bit about me. I am based in Edinburgh in the UK, so very, very far north in Scotland. And for me, I work very closely with Ellen as part of Ellen Parker Consulting, but in addition, run my own consultancy centered around diverse media planning and buying, including media forensics and auditing called Multitudes Consulting. So
Yes.
yeah, so my whole goal and opportunity here today is to help folks understand a little bit more and demystify and get their knowledge feeling really confident. So I'm excited to dive in with Ellen today and the rest of you.
Thank you, Iesha. And her information is on the slide. And of course, you are more than welcome. Please connect with us. Please connect with her. I have her information. If you cannot connect with her for some reason, I can make things happen. But like we mentioned earlier, we are here to learn. We are here to grow. We are here to expand our knowledge. And the best way to learn is to teach to somebody else. So this is basically we are being barked from every corner, from every angle. I hear you. I want to recognize you. I want to let you know that I see you. There's always a lot of things going on in this industry, at least. Not even mentioning what we have going on in our personal lives. So this is a safe space. There are no crazy questions. There are no stupid questions. There are no unwanted questions. All is welcome. It does not matter. Okay, we have some bilingual people joining us. So if I need to slow it down for you, feel free to let me know. You can chat me directly or just drop it in the comment. But everything that we're going to share today, it's for the purpose of teaching you how to continue learning about this industry. Because I don't just want to teach you how to fish. I want to give you the boat. I want to give you the fishing rod. I want to give you all the tools necessary, some sunblock and all of it. So this is what we're going to do today. And we're going to focus our conversation around pre-bid filters and post-verification first. So Iesha, you and I have had a lot of conversation around this topic with some of the workshop that you hosted for some of our clients. And so a lot of the conversation you're going to hear here, folks, is also, I'm going to say takeaways from the programmatic workshop we've done. So before we talk about even how to troubleshoot this, Aisha, can you please let us take it one step back, define the difference between the two before we can even assess how to fix it? Please help me understand the difference.
For pre-bid and vote pre-bid filters and post-bid verification.
Mhm. Yep.
So for pre-bid filters, this is the sort of things that when you go into your platform, your DSP, Trade Desk, Yahoo, Amazon DSP, whatever you're looking for, it may the settings that are pre-bid filters may belong to the platform in question. So in Google's case, you may be familiar with something called active view for viewability.
Mhm.
And you may also see things as Ellen has a screenshot here, where this is actually a screenshot of Trade Desk, and you can see multiple other partners, including Peer 39, Double Verify, IIS, etc. So pre-bid filters basically act kind of like what it sounds like. It's a sieve that goes on top of the bidding mechanism. So before you ever put that bid in, the system is saying, okay, I don't want to be on content that maybe has a historical viewability rating of less than 70%.
Mhm.
Or I would like to not be on inventory that doesn't have a player size for video that is declared as, small or
Mhm.
something like that.
Yeah.
So it's all the stuff that happens behind the scenes before the bids ever go out.
Okay. Okay. So pre-bid filters is basically um a filter, right? There's every
Yes, exactly.
before you dive into that ocean that is open exchange, at least in this case, is for my example,
Yes,
you're going to make sure that you're equipped and that you're only going to dive into certain type of waters, right? As much as possible.
absolutely.
Not post
Absolutely.
verification. What is that?
So post bid is kind of like if we're going to say pre bid is like a sieve,
Hmm.
post bid is maybe like the plate that you put underneath when you're maybe like you're trying to like sieve through like a custard, you're making sure you're not getting any of the gross eggy bits. I like to cook, so I like to use a lot of cooking analogies. So post bid is looking at what happened. It's telling on you.
Okay.
snitching, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
So you would say,
Verify.
okay,
Get it.
um, I said I wanted to, hit a 70% threshold for viewability. I bought, these sets of ads and the reports coming back, the post bid verification wrapper, it analyzed how that entire um performance happened, right?
Mhm.
So everything that the bid goes out and it's looking, okay, how did this perform? And then it's coming back and it's telling and it's saying, ooh, that was only 62% viewable on average. Ooh, not so great out of, 1,000 impressions, that, maybe this isn't, hitting your threshold. So
Got
it doesn't stop anything necessarily from occurring in every case, but it's
got it.
telling you what occurred.
Okay, I see, I see, I see. Okay. And okay, so which one is more important?
They're important in different ways.
Okay.
So pre-bid filters are more costly up front. They might cost you, depending on where you are in the world. I've seen them as expensive as like 10 cents. I've seen them as expensive as like $1.50.
Mhm.
Depends on all sorts of different things, who your contract is, what agency you work with, what brand,
That's true.
boring, boring stuff. But they save you more money in the long run on average because you're not spending that extra 5, $6 to actually bid on stuff that maybe was a waste for your client or for yourself.
Right.
Versus post bid verification is generally cheaper,
Mm,
but you already bought the stuff and maybe, like I said, it didn't hit the client's preferred thresholds and goals. So the client may say, well, these impressions don't count to me.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I want you to go, you promised me 70% viewability for, $50,000 worth of buys, but the viewability only came in at 65%. So I
Mm,
want you to redo this until you hit that 70% threshold.
mhm,
Well,
mm,
your agency or your brand, you just ate that cost.
mm.
So they work in tandem. Neither is more important than the other, but it is important to know how these things interplay with each other and also what they can and cannot do.
Okay, I like the way you said that because they're both very important. And I think as a buyer, right? So I'm going to give the trader's perspective here. I think as a trader, like she mentioned, like Iesha mentioned, it's like we've passed on down this standardization that we must only work with. I don't know if you see my little blue dot here, but brand safety per 39. And for viewability, we must only use double verify, right? And so each of those have different methodology for analyzing, for screening, for screening this ad inventory before we even bid on it. And so sometimes it doesn't communicate well. And then like Iesha said, there's a whole thing where the DSP has probably something internally and nothing communicates very well, and that's how costs can be associated. But I wanted to break it down because whether you have one or the other, usually having both can help you literally verify your inventory. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about MFAs made for arbitrage inventory sites. There's a lot of conversation about curation sites. There is a lot of conversation about curation. We're going to touch about it in like about 10 minutes or in a few minutes here. But the whole point of us covering those pre-bid filters and post-verification filters or settings is because it's going to lead into the bigger conversation with deals, inventory selection, how to control quality inventory as much as we can, right? So, Iesha, before we move into like the next slides, right? How what is give us some example of post verification partners you've worked with.
Sure. So I've worked with post-bid verification partners in the past,
Mhm.
like Double Verify,
Okay.
Integral Ad Science, in particular. Some pre-bid filter partners that I have worked with, would be the same too, IIS and Double Verify, also Moat,
Oh yeah.
but who is RIP Moat? They sunset last month, permanently and no longer work.
Yeah.
Oracle decided no longer to utilize an ad verification service. and got out of the industry pretty much entirely.
Wow.
In addition, there's another company called Human,
Yeah.
which was formerly called White Ops. So
Yeah.
there's plenty more. AdLooks is another very famous pre-bid filter, ad verification company. So depending on where you are in the world, and again, what contracts your agency or brand have available, there are anywhere from, maybe like two or three partners that you may be super familiar with, but there are plenty of partners and new ones coming online all of the time.
And I would also add to what Aisha is saying is that when you're considering, excuse me, working with those partners, I would test one or two, but not at the same time. Like cost wise, it doesn't make sense. And again, some of those methodologies don't play with it.
Interplay, yeah.
Yeah, play. And let me give clarified. I would probably try one of each category. So I don't even think you can add like two uh, pre-bid filters in your DSP settings, but at least if you're gonna go with IAS and IAS has post verification and pre-bid, then I will test that, right? And then I will test something else somewhere else and then compare that way, if that makes sense.
I've definitely seen people before stack pre-bid
Well,
filters in platforms.
how much is that
Um,
good?
because people
Good.
are like, they're like, maybe they have ISDV and maybe they also have human as well. When you do that, you're probably just really constraining your avails and spending a lot of money that maybe is a bit unnecessary. But I
True.
understand the open web can be a scary place. Why I understand why people do it, even if I don't recommend it.
Yes, 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 yes. And all right, so walk us through some common causes. I know we just slapped these most popular one on the slide here, but walk us through maybe a couple example for like for two of them, let's say.
Yeah. So we can say restrictive filter settings. So the first one.
Mhm.
So hear me out.
What is
Maybe
that?
you're in Trade Desk Display and Video 360, so Google's DSP,
Mhm.
and you folks have probably seen a content category
Mhm.
list before. And
Mhm.
so maybe it'll be like, ooh, I, really do think that, pop news, pop culture news is cool. And you decide you want to select that and you would like to target.
Mhm.
Well, what if you're working with a PMP
Mhm.
and you've got that setting selected, but maybe pop culture news is something that Google decided to create as the schema and as that nomenclature.
Mhm.
But the PMP or the even the seller or the publisher you're using, maybe they just have it categorized, they just categorize themselves as regular old news. That's a mismatch right there. And so it's an accident. You don't necessarily know
Uh-huh.
how in these cases that how the platforms or how sometimes these vendors are categorizing things are the same as how the vendor sees themselves, right? Your publisher or your seller. They may not necessarily match up. So that's a case of a mismatch right there, and a very, very common one.
Yeah.
Another one that can happen is we go number three, like the outdated
Data
data signals.
talk to us, yeah.
Yeah. So I always like to say anybody can have a bad day. Anybody can have like what I like to call a DDoS attack and have bots swarm them and just, kind of get hijacked and have a little bit of a crazy day.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
who's to say, right, that, maybe I have a really popular website called IeshaLovesCookies.com and I have all these cookie recipes and my site just totally gets swamped by bots someday for some reason. And that's the day that a crawler bot
Mm-hmm.
comes from an ad verification partner and is saying, "Oh, well, the viewability and the ad fraud rate, the IVT on this website is awful. Oh
Mm.
no, this is a mark against this Iesha, lovescookies.com site. Ugh." And I was just having a bad day, right? And it wasn't my fault necessarily. And so then I noticed that my fill, right, as a seller,
Yeah.
the fill rate is like really low. And I'm like, wow, like I'm not getting the same people buying the ads on my site as they were like, maybe like even like a month ago. Well, maybe that's because these ad verification filters, what they do in a lot of cases is that they will they send out a crawler bot to, grade the site and say, okay, yes, viewability is on average X%, or IVT is on average X%. But if I had a bad day or a bad week or something weird's going on, maybe I got graded, and my grade went down. And then all of a sudden you've put a filter on that says, no more than, 1% IVT. And even though I normally don't have an IVT problem, maybe for the next month, I'm categorized as like high IVT and a risk,
That's
even though
crazy.
it was only a 1 day or a 1 week only problem. So a very uncommon occurrence, but things like that do happen.
Yeah. Yo, do anyone here always like feels a little bit bad for the publisher? They got a lot to go, and they have a lot going on. Okay, they have a whole lot of shit. I'm gonna try to make everybody's proud here, just in case you got coworkers in the background, but they have here, just in case you got coworkers in the background, but they have a lot going on, right? Like, and that's a perfect example. And I attended Ad Monster in Boston, and Jenna Maroon from the Washington Post was giving example of like miscategorization of articles, and one was about the best recipe for brownies, and it was literally real brownies and it had nuts on it and it looked fantastic, but it was miscategorized as drug related, right? Because sometimes people bake cannabis, like weed, inside of the brownie, but nothing on that recipe. It was a regular recipe, like your grandma could have cooked it, right? But it was miscategorized, and therefore that article did not get, placement or ad placement or whatnot. So I love that example. Can you give us like conflicting filters? Can you just
Yeah,
elaborate one more time, because I feel like we need
sure.
to say it again for the people in the back.
No problem. So let's say we'll use the IeshaLovesCookies.com example
Yeah.
again. And I am a really popular blogger. Maybe I get 1 million uniques visitors a month. So I'm doing okay, right? For a small time blogger. I'm no New York Times cooking section, but I do okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I think the time has come where I'm big enough. I want to do things to optimize my yield.
Mhm,
And I'm going to partner with Double Verify
mhm,
to make sure that on my side as a publisher that I am, presenting my best face forward to buyers. And so Double Verify is like, yeah, no problem. I got you. We're going to work to make sure you have the best viewability and like make sure ad fraud is low and that brand safety, and like you're not using things that could, trigger our sensors.
mhm.
But famously, right, if Ellen is to go into Trade Desk and buy, maybe she wants to, just I'm in her allow list, right? My website. Trade Desk famously uses human as a pre-bid vendor.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. Every single impression that runs through the Trade Desk has to be pre-filtered by
Yeah.
human for invalid traffic.
Mhm.
Well, again, this could happen. Not saying it does happen all the time, but it's a possibility. Who's to say that human and Double Verify agree every single time on what a bot is?
Nope.
They may not agree. They may decide that, well, Aisha's receiving traffic from, a data center, and that is technically IVT, but it's not the bad IVT, it's just natural. Because maybe I have, stuff um, in multiple languages, and I've got like, cool little things going on, like little widgets, and things are just happening.
Mm.
But I in Double Verify says that's okay. That's not actually bad. But maybe humans like, that's too that sets off our bot monitor.
Yeah.
So that's like an example where those two things may not necessarily agree,
Mm.
even though they're both trying to do right by the seller and the buyer.
Yeah, 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 yes.
They don't always agree necessarily. So it's important to kind of keep those sorts of things in mind. They may use very similar methodologies, but
Mhm.
the schemas and the methodologies may not exactly be identical.
And I
So you
think
don't get an identical result.
that's true. I think it's the great segue into how we fix this stuff. How we fix this
Yeah.
stuff as a trader.
Yeah. So how we fix it, honestly, the biggest thing about fixing these sorts of items is to start asking questions as the buyer.
Uh,
So it really that's it is going in and
yeah,
getting dirty and
yeah.
getting knowledgeable.
Mhm.
And and learning about how these filters and settings work. We can't automate our way to brand safety, as Nandini Jami likes to say, from Check My Ad. So you have to start asking questions. So my recommendation is like, if you're not sure what vendor your PMP seller is using. So like, I love BuzzFeed, and I'm like, hey, BuzzFeed, I actually really like to use Google Active View for viewability. Is that okay? I'm not saying BuzzFeed would say this in real life, but maybe BuzzFeed says, actually, we use IIS for viewability. Would you be willing to
That's
not put
right.
Google Active View on and
Yeah.
let us handle, double verify viewability? And that would be a conversation maybe I would want to have.
Hmm.
Because there's been cases where people are right, they're like, man, this PMP is just not scaling. Like, what in the world? And they can see the avails are large. There might be millions of avails on offer, but they're not scaling really very well. And often it comes down to minor things like these pre-bid type filters in the platforms that just don't agree. So getting comfortable and asking questions, hey, I have news as a content category applied in my platform. Do you know if that will hurt you? My publisher partner or my seller. Do you know if you categorize things the same way as Google or Trade Desk? They may say, actually, we don't see ourselves as news. We see ourselves as, entertainment. You
Yeah.
know,
So
could be
important.
all sorts of things.
That's such an important conversation to have with the partners, because even if you have you're selecting a deal, I know we're talking about pre-bid filters and post verification, but even if you have to um get a um even if you have to select a deal from your private marketplace already available within your DSP, right? It's okay to reach out. Most likely your DSP will have a contact for that deal. Reach out to that contact. Take that extra step to do it. Yes, and it's an extra step, but at the end of the day, the deal may not suck like we think it is. It's just because we have so many damn filters because